Gather round, listeners, and settle in for a yarn. Tonight we're going to walk about through a land of ancient whispers, the land of the Aboriginal Australians.
It seems you've brought us a right swag of research this time. Keen to delve into the heart of this country, are we? Unravel the mysteries of the first Australians, eh?
Right, you are, mate. And what better way to start than with the word Aboriginal itself? It comes from the Latin, meaning from the origin.
There's a certain poetry to that, isn't there? Speaks to a history stretching back at least, 50,000 years?
50,000 years makes the pyramids look like they were built yesterday. I mean, think about the Mungo Man discovery.
Ah, yes, Mungo Man.
A skeleton found in New South Wales dating back 42,000 years, a window into the Dreamtime.
The Dreamtime. Chukurpa, as the Anangu people call it. Not just mythology, mind you. It's their whole worldview, their connection to the land, their ancestors, everything.
And get this, they found a genetic link to the Denisovans, those extinct human relatives. Like those ancient ancestors are whispering secrets across the millennia. It's mind-blowing.
It certainly adds a layer of intrigue, doesn't it? And it's crucial to remember we're not talking about a single group here. Aboriginal Australians, it encompasses over 400 distinct groups, each with their own unique story, their own way of life.
Like the Koori down south,
the Marie up north,
the Noongar over west.
A constellation of cultures scattered across this vast land.
A symphony of voices, wouldn't you say?
Precisely. Each with their own language, their own customs, their own relationship to this land. And yet, there are these common threads woven throughout, these shared beliefs and experiences that bind them together.
Like Uluru, that big red heart in the center of the country.
Ah, Uluru. More than just a rock, that one.
A sacred site for thousands of years.
A living testament to the Dreamtime. A beacon that resonates with the spiritual energy of this ancient land.
Speaking of ancient knowledge, did you know that Aboriginal Australians might be the world's first astronomers?
I've heard whispers of that.
I mean, they've been reading the night sky for millennia, using the stars to navigate, tell stories, keep time.
They saw patterns we never even imagined, like the emu in the sky, for instance.
The emu in the sky.
It's not a constellation like we think of them in the Western sense. It's a dark constellation formed by the dust lanes of the Milky Way.
Imagine that, seeing shapes in the darkness between the stars.
It's a different way of seeing the universe. And sadly, we've lost so much of that ancient knowledge. The languages, for example. Hundreds of them were spoken before colonization, and now, less than 20 are still spoken fluently.
A tragic loss, isn't it?
Yeah.
Each language, a library of knowledge, a unique way of understanding the world.
Linguists are still debating, actually, trying to determine if they belong to distinct language families or whether they've become intertwined over time, what they call a sprachbund.
A spragbund. Sounds like something out of the Dreamtime itself.
Think of it as a cross-pollination of languages. Words, grammatical structures borrowed and shared over thousands of years, even if they weren't originally related.
Fascinating. But a reminder, isn't it, of how easily those whispers from the past can fade away.
And then there's their art. Mate, it's like a whole of their language, whispered through ochre and charcoal, etched onto rock faces and bark.
Ah, those ancient rock paintings, like stepping back in time, seeing the world through the eyes of the ancestors.
The oldest rock art in Australia dates back at least 40,000 years. It's a visual diary, really. Their history, beliefs, connection to the land, it's all there.
Like a secret code whispered across the centuries. And then you've got someone like Albert Namatjira, bringing those stories to the world.
Namatjira, he was a visionary, a bridge between two worlds, combining Western techniques with traditional storytelling, bringing Aboriginal art to a global audience.
I mean, even the Queen was captivated by his work.
He painted the landscapes that spoke to him, the stories hidden in those ancient rocks and trees.
And speaking of stories, what about bush tucker? It's more than just food, isn't it?
It's survival, mate. Knowing which plants can heal, which can harm, reading the signs of the land, understanding the rhythms of nature.
The first Australians, they lived in harmony with this country.
These are its secrets, its hidden bounty.
They knew how to find water in a parched desert, how to track a kangaroo through Spinifex, how to use every part of a plant for food or medicine.
But sadly, so much of that knowledge was lost during colonization.
Ah, the arrival of the first fleet in 1788. A real turning point.
A clash of cultures ripped through this land like a wildfire.
Devastating impact. Disease, displacement, violence.
And then there's that whole concept of terra nullius, declaring the land empty.
As if those ancient voices didn't matter.
As if their connection to this country was invisible.
A legal fiction. used to justify taking their land.
Denying their history, their culture, their very existence, a wound that still hasn't fully healed.
And then, of course, there's the Black War in Tasmania.
The Black War, a tragedy.
It decimated the island's Aboriginal population.
A reminder of the darkness that can consume us when we fail to listen to the whispers of history.
Trugani, the last full-blooded Tasmanian Aboriginal woman, she witnessed it all.
The destruction of her people.
Her story, it's a haunting reminder of the cost of ignorance and greed.
But the first Australians, they didn't give up without a fight.
Oh no, they resisted, fought back, protected their land and their culture.
The spirit of resistance runs deep in this country.
Pemulwuy, Yaghan. Their names echo through history, leading guerrilla wars against the settlers, defending their way of life.
Symbols of courage and resilience.
These were warriors. They knew this land like the back of their hand. But the stolen generations, that's a wound that cuts even deeper, wouldn't you say?
The forced removal of Aboriginal children from their families, it was a deliberate attempt to break their connection to their culture, their language, their identity.
Imagine having your children ripped from your arms, stolen away.
A policy of assimilation, a dark chapter. And the scars are still felt today.
But even in the face of all that adversity, the spirit of the first Australians endured.
The 20th century saw a glimmer of hope, a growing recognition of the injustices they had suffered.
The 1967 referendum, that was a watershed moment.
It finally gave Aboriginal Australians the right to vote in federal elections, to be counted as citizens of their own country.
Hard to believe it took so long. To acknowledge their basic rights.
But the fight was far from over.
They still had to fight for their land, their culture, their voice.
The Mabo decision in 1992, that was a landmark victory.
Overturning the doctrine of terra nullius.
It acknowledged that Aboriginal people had a pre-existing connection to their land.
Paving the way for native title claims.
A recognition of their ancient rights, a step towards healing.
Towards reconciliation.
But the path to reconciliation, it's long and winding.
And the gap between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Australians, it remains a chasm.
Lower life expectancy, higher incarceration rates, limited access to education and healthcare.
It's a bleak picture.
And then there are the shared responsibility agreements.
Government initiative, right, aimed at improving living conditions in those remote communities.
Funding and support in exchange for commitments
Right.
to things like school attendance and health checks.
But are they working? Some argue it's a step in the right direction,
Others see it as another form of control.
dictating how Aboriginal people should live their lives.
It's a complex issue, no easy answers. The key is to listen to the voices of the first Australians, understand their needs, their aspirations, and work together towards a future where their whispers are heard and respected.
Makes you think, doesn't it? All those challenges they faced, yet their culture is still thriving.
It's quite remarkable when you stop and think about it. Their art, their music, those stories, it's weaving its way into modern Australia, you know.
You see it everywhere these days. Indigenous art in the galleries, festivals celebrating their music and dance. Even fashion designers are incorporating those traditional motifs.
It's a resurgence, a reclaiming of their heritage, you could say.
Those whispers, they're getting louder, echoing across the generations. And we've only just scratched the surface, haven't we?
We've barely dipped our toes into those deep waters. Think about it. Their culture has survived ice ages, droughts, colonization.
They've seen empires rise and fall, watched the landscape change over millennia.
They have this incredible understanding of deep time, something we could all learn from, perhaps.
Deep time. It's like their story stretches back so far, it makes our own worries seem small.
Maybe they hold the key to surviving the challenges we face today. Climate change, environmental destruction.
Their connection to the land, that respect for nature, that deep understanding of sustainability.
It's wisdom passed down through countless generations.
A reminder that we're not just inheritors of this land, but caretakers for those who come after us. Well, mate, it's been a real journey, hasn't it?
A walkabout through history, culture, and the enduring spirit of the first Australians.
And to our listener, I reckon this is just the beginning. Keep listening to those whispers of the outback. You never know what secrets they might reveal.